I was a signature away from being put up for adoption.
When you were old enough, what did that mean to you?
It gave me a capacity to understand and empathize with their situation, which led to a lot of forgiveness. The stuff you go through, it wasn't your fault, but you're responsible for it. Growing up, I was raised by my mom, my grandmother, a collection of babysitters, and a collection of men that were in and out of my mom's life, right? And so there wasn't a lot of control over what I experienced. I was in situations where I was abused. Those things impact you. They impact your psyche. They form who you are.
Your actions, your reactions.
Right, all of it. So for whatever reason, I've always been drawn to God and the feeling that there's something more powerful. And I've always just had faith that things will work out. I've always just, if I've trusted anybody, it's been myself. And when things don't go the right way, I just pivot. You have a choice to either ignore it or take it and take responsibility for it. I'm responsible for it.
What is up, everybody? This is Joe Adams, and welcome to the Relentless Pursuit podcast. What we do on this podcast is bringing guests from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life to share their journey and everything along the way that led them to where they're at today. Real conversations, raw emotion, and the kind of human connection that can't be faked. We're here to make an impact, and that is what we do. So if that is for you, like, subscribe, all those wonderful things. And if that is not for you, I don't know what your problem is, but it's time to jump on board today. Thank you. But without further ado, I would love to introduce today's guest, Mr. Nick George.
Golf clap, golf clap.
Crowd goes wild. Damn. Anyways, Nick, it's a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Guys, I got connected with Nick through my friend Tiffany Childers. If you haven't, you obviously don't know who she is. If you do, go back and check out her episodes. I butchered all that I just said. But anyways, she was a past guest on here not too long ago. And absolutely phenomenal episode, phenomenal individual. So shout out to Tiffany for making this connection.
Yep.
And then we got connected finally. Mm-hmm. There was some reluctance coming on here.
Yeah, a little bit.
With you.
Yeah.
You know, you had said that there was just like, you were kind of stuck with the questionnaire. You kind of been going through some stuff. And at first I was like, man, okay, I'll just let him know. We can table it until he's ready. But I was like, you know what? A lot of powerful stuff can come from just like having this conversation with you where you're at.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad you're here, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nick's a retired Coast Guard Chief Petty Officer.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know how I got that.
Yeah.
I was Air
22
Force.
years. Yep.
Nice, man. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you coach people in leadership and something along those lines, correct?
Yeah. I'm a professional coach and been coaching leadership development for anybody who's ready to be a better leader and do better in life, as far as whether it's professionally, personally. That's what I focus on and what I help folks do.
What does life look like for you today, right now? Where you at?
Oh, life, I think, is a big transition, but a big collection of transitions. And I'm in one of my probably more of my bigger transitions. Like you just alluded to, I was in the service for almost 22 years, retired in 2019, and then moved right into the corporate world, where I also did leadership development for about 6 years. And actually was laid off from that job last February. And so February, March, April, it's May right now. I'm 3 months. This past February, yeah. So 6 years. So I'm in a space of, this is the first time since I was probably 16 years old where I haven't had like a job in the traditional sense, right? It was in the military for a long time, and then I went to the corporate world, had an office job. I was teaching, coaching, doing leadership development, and something I was telling my wife, I've said it a lot over the last couple of months. I'm like, I feel like I have an opportunity to finally do something I want to do versus something I feel like I need to do for a million other reasons. Like, I need to go do this so I can support my family, or I need to go do this because this is what is expected of me, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm working through what the next thing is for me, right?
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be being service to others. That's always been my passion, is helping people in some sort of capacity. through coaching, just being a helpful human, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing now. Really focused on enjoying my kids. I got 5 of them. The littlest one's at home every day. And so really just enjoying that time with him before he goes off to grade school and we don't see him,
Yeah.
all day, every day. My wife is going back to work, building her empire as also a professional coach, helping women. And so that's what life is for me right now. And I'm working hard to enjoy it, which sounds kind of like a contradiction because
Yeah.
I'm so used to doing things that it's hard for me to allow myself to relax and kind of let go and have faith that everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to, rather than me trying to manipulate it to be something that gives me security.
Control it. The control thing has been big for me, like I told you about starting my brand, right? The first several years was controlling what it turned into. I had the vision that I was going towards, like white knuckling it, right, on the steering wheel. And then in beginning of last year, I've spoken about this several times recently, was a place of getting in alignment myself.
Yep.
Like, okay, I've been held on to trying to control this thing for so long. Now I've left this space, all these changes are happening. I just need to fall into alignment and just really like coming to that in every single way. And then this year has been big on just like having faith in what's ahead. Like for the first time, I don't know what's ahead, and you never know what's ahead,
Right.
but I understand that. Like, I don't know what's in front of me, but I'm headed in the right direction.
Right.
And this is pure faith. And I know it's the direction. I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be,
Yep.
and that's, it takes a lot of work to get to that. So,
Yep.
and I know it's probably goes along with what you were just saying. And I wanted to ask, trying to figure that out, what does that look like day to day?
For me, and one thing I do a lot when I'm coaching others is one of the first things I do is work through what people's values are.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds so simple, but it's really difficult. People don't really give a lot of thought to like what really drives their decisions, what drives them to wake up, do the things that they do. And so I think that's the basis of what you just talked about, like alignment, right? So for me, my values are freedom, service, integrity, love.
Yeah.
So if I'm operating every day within those values, then that helps me have faith. That helps me stay aligned in intention with what I want for my family, my priorities, things of that nature, right?
Yeah.
Like how I raise my kids. I want them to feel free, loved, supported. I'm always going to be honest with them.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time when it comes to the career thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the first time, kind of calling back to what I was talking about earlier, it's the first time in my career where I'm like, I'm going to choose my career based on my values for a change instead of going to do that thing that I have to do because I need money to provide, take care of, which is a real thing in this world.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, I have the opportunity, the finances to hold me a minute to explore this more.
Mm-hmm.
My wife gets the opportunity to not have to be the stay-at-home mom like she's been for the last 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And pursue her dreams a little bit. And so, maybe I can be a little stay-at-home dad a little bit and, experience this. And, because I've been grinding and being away from the kids is a lot. It's a lot to sacrifice. And so now, I get to, put my kid to bed every night, which I didn't get to do with my first son. Right?
Yeah.
It's hard to articulate because I'm still moving through it, to be quite honest with you. But every day I wake up with the intention to be more in alignment with my values, freedom, service, integrity, love, and make decisions and set my intentions based on that, and just trust that it's all going to work.
Yeah.
I
agree.
Which is really freaking hard to do.
It is. It is.
It's really, and I've battled depression a lot in my life, and like when things don't feel aligned, it can really
spiral you,
pull you down.
Yeah.
You mentioned Reluctance coming on the podcast. I fully own it. But it was interesting because when I was reading your questions, like, what are you passionate about? I was like, shit, what am I passionate about right now? I don't know,
Yeah.
and my wife is a saint. She's a goddess. She's everything to me. And she's got a lot of background in psychology and things like that. So she's really good at reflecting what's going on for me, even when I can't see it, or even understand it until later when I've, my energy's shifted a little bit. But, she tells me all the time, like, you've been through a lot, and it's okay. And it's going to take time. And that, one of the things that she points out to me quite a bit is that, with the whole like depression thing, is that she's helped me see it. And so I'm in a space of like not understand, like for a long time that would like control me and like pull me down. But she helps me see that, hey, this is triggering you, which I hate the word trigger, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But it triggers you. And then you get into this depression space and you can't even function. Like it's hard to even function and, whatever. And so, she's helped me see things from a more logical perspective versus, because I'm a very emotional person. So she helps me see things from a more logical perspective to understand it on that level. And then, through the work I've done for myself is, I've gotten pretty good at letting myself sit with it. But, I think part of my reluctancy coming on to your show was I've done a lot of work to like overcome the stories of my life and the things that I've been through, that for a long time, it felt like my identity. And I'm in a place now where I'm like, that's no longer my identity.
You're like transforming.
Yeah. So what I feel like I realized in this experience of like kind of revisiting like what's my story is I don't know if I want that to be my story anymore or my identity. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
So it was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I'm ready to go out there and tell the world this is who I am, because I don't want that to be the message, because it's not who I am. It's how I got here.
Yeah.
But it's not who I am anymore. And so I'm still working through that, but that was the energy. And then, listening to your story and, it all reminds me that there's power in sharing our stories, right? Because I think we all feel like we're living this life sometimes in a silo, and we don't realize that we're all going through it. I even reflected to my wife just last night when we were talking about it. I said, I look at Joe's podcasts, the guests he's had on there, and I'm like those guys got stories, I'm like, what do I have to offer? And she's like, well, that's the typical response for someone who's been through a lot of trauma, is that,
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Most people have had that. It's said like, I don't, well, they always have such killer stories. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, don't get in your head. Like, just come on, let's do this.
So I come here humbly and ready to rock and roll. So.
Well, I think that's talk about coaching people in leadership. I think that's true leadership, is being vulnerable and being honest about where you're at, because like every leader is going to go through these kinds of things. Things aren't going to work out the way maybe they expected them to. You lost your corporate job you were with for how long?
6 years.
Yeah, but then you realize, like, one, there's not really any security in the corporate world like you may have thought. And that's a harsh reality. I mean, my dad saw it just a couple years before retirement, and now he's had to re-gear and extend that. And it breaks my heart for him, because he's busted his ass, my whole life. And it's like, damn. So it's like you got the opportunity to pour into yourself and what you create, right? And while it's been a grind for me and a struggle a lot of times, at the same time, I know I can depend on myself to make things happen and see it through. And I just don't trust somebody that I don't really know them well to have control of my fate in that way.
Right.
So I think it's a beautiful opportunity, man. And I love where you're at. It sounds like you're really focused on like circling back to being present. And so from my perspective, if you don't mind if I offer with it, I think where you're at and listening to you, I can't help but think like this is where you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
Like
for
at
sure.
home with your kids and like kind of in this new place that you haven't got to really experience yet.
Mhm.
And you get to be a little bit more grateful for it, because say you stuck with your job, like again, we talked about being years down the road
Yeah.
and thinking back and being like, dude, like now they're all grown. Like I never really took the time to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so this is maybe heightened your awareness and
Yeah.
your goals a little bit more.
Yeah. And the irony of it all really is it's all I ever wanted my entire life. So what I've been working towards. And then I get it and I'm just like, oh shit.
Yeah. It's not good enough.
It's not exactly.
I feel you, man. It's a constant battle, right? Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for that honesty, man. That means a lot. Now let's start taking it back, man.
Sure.
Let's go back to what brought you here to this place right now.
Yep.
Where do you hail from? Where were you born? Let's start walking through childhood a little bit.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
Grew up there all through, high school. Then from high school, I joined the service, not to skip too far ahead too fast, but my childhood was, pretty inconsistent, disrupted by a lot. My life started off in probably some of the most unfavorable circumstances. My father was 33 years old, was with my mother who was 16 and got her pregnant. And as you can imagine, that didn't go over too well with my family. And so from what I've pieced together over the years that, those circumstances pushed my father, he told me once that my grandfather was like, get away from my daughter. I never want to see you again. And he said, okay, that's his story. My mom's story was he was a piece of shit and left. So somewhere in there is a thread of truth.
Yeah, probably a combination somewhat.
Yeah. So, I learned later on in life that their intention was to, I was a signature away from being put up for adoption. I look back on that, I'm 46 years old and I get it. Like, when you're growing up and you're told that you're almost put up for adoption, it kind of feels like you're like unwanted. But as an adult, you're like, well, shit, man, I got a 15-year-old daughter. Like, if she got pregnant in that circumstance, like it would be definitely something that you would think about. Right.
Yeah.
So I get it as an adult now, but when you're a kid and it's kind of used as like you're lucky to be here kind of like a statement.
Like, wait, that's just kind of jacked up.
Yeah. And I'm like, am I actually?
It's not your fault you were conceived.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I was a regular kid. I probably was a kid that.
Well, if you don't mind real quick.
Yeah.
When you were old enough to understand that, right? Like the age difference and almost being put up for adoption. I guess when you were old enough, what did that mean to you?
I don't know what it meant to me necessarily. What I do know, I think what it meant for me, I know what it meant for me in regards to how I related with and understood my mom's journey. Right? Like, she was a kid who had a kid. Right. And I don't think that really dawned on me until I was probably in my 30s that like she was super freaking young, like, holy shit. I can't imagine. Like, I had a kid when I was 26 and I was like, what am I doing? She had a kid when she was barely 17.
Yeah. And then your
then
father was, just slightly younger than I am now.
Right. Right. So like, what the hell? Right.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine the shame, the guilt, the who knows what that she must have been experiencing, the anxiety, the oh shit factor, just all of it, right? So it gave me a capacity to understand and empathize with their situation, which led to a lot of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a beautiful thing. But I heard something a long time ago, like the stuff you go through, it took me a while to realize that the stuff you go through, like it wasn't your fault, but you're responsible for it. Right. Like, and so for me, like growing up, I was raised by my mom, my grandmother, a collection of babysitters, and a collection of men that were in and out of my mom's life. Right. And so there wasn't a lot of control over like what I experienced in life. I was in situations where I was abused, physically, sexually as a kid, put into situations with my brother and sister, which no kid should ever have to freaking experience, right? And so, those things impact you. They impact your psyche. They form who you are.
Impact your actions, your reactions.
Right, all of it. So when I was younger, I was a little bit of a wild child, ran away from home when I was in middle school. I mean, I just didn't come home from school one day. I lived in his kid's basement, and he gave me his mom's food stamps, and that's how I survived for like 2 weeks, because I just
wanted to escape.
And I didn't realize that in the moment. I look back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, well that's what was going on, because that happened, and I was like, I can't do this life anymore. So I said, screw it, I'm out of here. And then by the age of 16, my mom was in a challenging marriage, to say the least, and he and I didn't have a great relationship, and I gave my mom an ultimatum. I was like, it's us kids or him, you choose. And she chose him, and I left. And which was really hard for me, because I was sort of like the protector of my younger brother and sister. So leaving them at the age of 16 was difficult. I lived in my girlfriend's aunt's basement through high school. My wife tells me that it's a miracle that you graduated high school. And I was like, well, it's the only goal that kept me alive was just to keep going to school. And like,
I was going to ask, like, how did you survive all that?
Yeah, well, my wife will be the first person to she tells me all the time. She's like, your ACE score is probably off the chart. Like all the boxes that you check, you probably should have died of suicide or addiction or something by this point,
Yeah.
She's like, so you're a bit of a unicorn. I'm like, well, I don't know. I just put my head down and go. Like, I have my shit. Like, relationships have always been difficult for me, because I keep a lot of people at arm's length, because trust has been a difficult thing for me when it comes to people, and so there's a whole myriad of stuff there to dig into, but I've always interestingly, and I'm a Christian man. I never was raised in like a denomination or a specific religion. Like my family, we went to church like on Christmas once in a while, and maybe an Easter. I could probably count on one hand, by the time I was 18, how many times I went to church.
Just to show face for the...
Right, basically. But like, for whatever reason, I've always been drawn to God, and the feeling that there's something more powerful, and I've always just had faith that things will work out. And I never knew what that meant until probably I got a little bit older and really understood, like, this is what I'm experiencing and feeling. And so I've always just, if I've trusted anybody, it's been myself. And when things don't go, quote unquote, the right way, I just pivot.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how I've, done my whole life. And obviously it's been dictated by a lot of the trauma that came from the abuses that I, went through. But over time you learn more about that, and you figure it out, and you understand how things are affecting you, and you have a choice to either ignore it or take it and take responsibility for it, which is kind of back to that point I was saying, like, I'm responsible for it now.
Yeah.
It's my responsibility.
Yeah. Most businesses try to solve one problem at a time. These guys built something different. Nashville Fit, Bodywell, and B2 Wellness Suites. 3 brands operating as one ecosystem. Community, collaboration, and wellness all under one roof. Nashville Fit runs a results-driven media network built for businesses at every level. Whether you're trying to grow your brand, sharpen your performance, or get back on track, this is where expert coaching meets real accountability. Bodywell is your starting point for event staffing, fitness, massage, wellness experiences brought directly to your corporation, your big event, your race. Whatever you're running, they show up ready. And B2 Wellness Suites is a collective of health and wellness professionals, each with their own specialty, all working towards one goal, helping you feel your best in a co-working environment that's relaxing to be in. Here's what makes it work. It's not just 3 separate businesses doing their own thing. Every piece is built to support the others. Advertising, coaching, accountability, wellness, all connected so you don't have to figure it out alone. If you're ready for a smarter, more complete approach, check out Nashville Fit, Bodywell, and B2 Wellness Suites. Links are in the description below. Drink. I don't know why I drank it like that. Anyways.
You have another arm, dude.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, I gotta keep holding my pen. Well, one, for your mother, do you think she resented or still resents the situation? And do you think there's a lot of like why there was that circulating door of men in and out of your life? Do you think there's a lot of attachment to that, you know?
I think she has a lot of guilt and shame, which is kind of the 2 sides of the same coin. I think that, you know, the sort of the generational or family trauma didn't start with that. I think that how I came into this world was also a product of her upbringing and her mom's upbringing and so on and so forth. Like, I have an uncle that was my mom's younger brother who died when he was, I want to say he was 9 years old.
Yeah.
Kidney problems in the 60s. And, you know, they didn't have the medicine that they do today to where, like, you know, they could fix that. So he passed away, and fairly certain from what I understand that crushed my grandparents, my mom. They soon after that had 2 more boys, and the boys became everything, you know, obviously probably because of, you know, they lost a boy. And then I think my mom, my interpretation is that she was there, but she was never focused on as much as she probably should have been as a kid. And so I think she was a teenager who was looking for love.
Yeah.
You know, and so I understand it. I get it. It is what it is. Like, I don't hold any I don't even hold any ill will towards my dad, you know. Like, I never knew him. You know, I know people who know their dads, and their dads are, you know, not great people. And I think, man, I probably was more blessed to not know my dad than actually know him and form a connection with him and be disappointed, you know.
I think it says a lot about you to be able to, you're like showing them compassion.
Yeah.
I think that's like, you know, we'll dive into this part of it. But, you know, I look at back on I have great parents. I'm very blessed to have the parents that I do. But I look at like past them, and, you know, because you still see things, right? Like, just as you grow and you understand them more, and, you know, you can connect a lot of trauma to stuff.
Right.
And then, you know, I think about, like, I was sexually abused as a kid too by a neighbor. And I've understood that, like, yeah, it doesn't excuse those actions, right? Like, that's not right to do. But at some point, that person probably faced some similar trauma, right? There's some generational shit and something that happened to them that led to that, right?
Right.
Because I truly believe people aren't inherently just going to do that to somebody.
Right.
Like, there's got to be some catalyst, right? And either you succumb to the darkness or you become better from it, right? I don't know. I can't speak for them, but it did affect me up until it still does, you know, like I wondered why I got so angry at people and like always had to have the last word and defend myself.
Yeah.
I did some work at the beginning of the last year that really like hit me like, holy shit. It brought me back to 8-year-old Joe and had me sitting there next to myself. It was very emotional. And I realized, holy shit. And maybe I get so angry or I had the last word or defend myself because like I wasn't able to do that. That's 8-year-old Joe coming out in these moments, right? And so it's really a blessing though to be able to go back and recognize that, because a lot of people hold on to that and bury it down and they never really face it. But when you do, you're able to understand yourself a lot better and grow from that, right?
Yep.
And So I bring it up to say that, like, obviously, I don't know what level of work you've done, but it's obvious that you've done some work to be able to hold that space and have that compassion, towards your parents.
Yeah.
And also just move through life the way you have. I mean, but it's something you're always going to be working on, right?
Oh yeah, forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It says a lot about you, and to be able to understand that, like, you don't sound from my seat like super resentful or anything.
No, I don't hold any resentment. And if I did ever, I released any resentment or anger towards what happened to me. I think that, you know, I wouldn't say my story still has a happy ending. My mom and I don't talk.
Yeah.
My siblings and I don't talk. There's a lot of, they're going through their own journey with what they experienced with me. My mom, um, she knows what's happened. She feels tremendous guilt about it. Um, it's not that she doesn't take responsibility for it, because I don't think she needs to. But I think what's been difficult for me in my relationship with her is that she continues to sort of make the same kind of quote unquote mistakes, instead of, like, she's never changed. And so it's hard to, subject yourself to the same kind of insanity over and over, expecting it to be different each time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I've set a hard boundary for myself and my kids,
Yeah.
and so it's one of those situations where, like, maybe one day we have a relationship, maybe one day we don't. I don't know. And I'm at a place of acceptance of, like, either way, it's fine.
Well, and your responsibility is your family and their
Right.
well-being, right? So
And that's my focus, and I can't keep getting pulled back to that.
yes, because
Which distracts me from my presence with my kids and all the things. And I'm not going to make the same mistakes that, that were made with me.
exactly. And and those boundaries are so important, because you're like, that's for the well-being of your kids. Like, you can't set a boundary worried you're going to offend somebody else. But if it brings a rift or it brings, like, any negativity to your family unit, it's necessary. That's how you change the generational traumas, and that's how you kind of break the chain, right?
And my mom and I started to reconnect probably about 4 years ago. And my sister's trauma, that was part of my trauma and my brother's trauma. My sister is very angry with me and my mom, and so she began creating chaos in our lives, because my mom and I are reconnecting. And I was like, well, Mom, if you can't handle this, then this isn't going to work. And she's never chose to handle that. So, for me, it's 8-year-old Nick feeling like I'm not being chosen again. And now I'm an adult and I don't have to put up with that.
Yeah.
So
setting those boundaries and doing those things, I mean, they're hard. Doesn't make it easy, but oftentimes the right thing is the most difficult thing to do. And I think a lot of people try to divert from any kind of drama or issues, and they just accept things for how they are, and they just, like, deal with it.
Right.
Which never fixes anything. And then it just passes on and passes on, rather than being like, man, I guess I got to be the one to set the boundary. As bad as it's going to suck, I know it's
so
the right
much easier
call.
if somebody else would do it, right?
Yeah, like, okay, oh, thanks. You took that weight off my shoulders, So honestly, like, again, props to you for being willing to do that, because I think a lot of people really struggle with the willingness to do that and, make that kind of change. Is there anybody that maybe came into your life at some point when in your childhood that showed you a different way to move forward in life? Like, maybe gave you hope of something different than what you had experienced?
That's a great question. don't know. I don't know if there's any certain person. I will say that my, I guess you can technically call him step grandfather. My grandmother remarried some years later, and my step grandfather, who was really my grandfather, was always really good to me, you know, and held like we didn't interact a whole lot, but like he was the one man in my life from probably like the age of 10 through, you know, whatever, that actually took time to spend time with me. Took me fishing, you know, caught my first trout with him, you know, when I was 18, had a car. I was like working on my car, and he came out and said, "Hey, it's really good that you are fearless when it comes to like figuring things out on your own." Like, so it's like one of the first men to like give me like actual validation that I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Maybe show you some stability too.
Yeah. And so, he's a big important piece of my life. And then, you know, I think what really did a lot for me, honestly, was I happened to make the choice to join the service at the age of 18. Now, I made that choice because I was working at a shoe store, you know, putting shoes on older women's feet, and was like, I can't do this shit for the rest of my life.
I'm over this.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to sit here in St. Louis, living in my girlfriend's basement, working at a shoe store. I got to do something.
Yeah.
You know? And so, you know, I started exploring military. There was no college fund for Nicholas, you know, like, so it was like, make your way or stay doing this. You know?
Where were you staying at this time? Because you left at 16. I'm sure there was like a combination of fear or relief with that.
I left home at 16. I moved into the basement of my girlfriend's aunt.
Okay.
And I stayed there essentially for a couple of years, and then I kind of couch surfed for a minute before I left for the service.
Okay.
And so, you know, I looked at Air Force. I looked at all the services. Coast Guard was the one that resonated with me when I was 18. I can't tell you my 18-year-old brain was thinking at the time. I think I didn't want to go to overseas and stuff like that. I was like, you know, Coast Guard looked cool. Their brochures had boats jumping waves and shit. And it was like, that looks cool. So that's what I did. So, ended up being a good choice because it did me well. And I think that being in a male-dominated service, I fortunately had really good leadership early in my career. You know, men that had been in the service for a while who were willing to take you under their wing, teach you a lot. And so it probably wasn't until my, you know, early 20s that I experienced, you know, what a good relationship with another male figure looks like. Yeah. You know, because to that point, I've always lived in anxiety and fear of them because it was always a different man in my life.
Yeah.
You know, through the collection of men that my mom, you know, dated, whatever. And so that brought its own struggle a little bit because, like, you know, in your service, you get stationed somewhere and there's a lot of turnover and things like that. So then I found myself oddly, like, I think I was in my late 20s feeling like I'm growing these attachments to these men because they're father figures to me in the service, and they're like, peace out.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit.
Don't
like,
go.
Yeah. It was like the weirdest thing because like I'm feeling I'm older and I'm like, what is this? You know? And I'm like, oh, it took me a while to realize, oh, this is like the kid part of me being like, oh,
interesting.
Are you my daddy?
Yeah. But no, it makes sense though. Like, you know, I haven't heard that because, you know, I think about my father was always there. Mm-hmm. Great father figure. I mean, he was gone a lot for work, but I was very fortunate and I'm very blessed to have the relationship I did. So going through, you know, my 6 years in the military, I never really thought that, you know, people came and gone. I was like, it's part of it. Peace.
Oh,
You know,
and honestly, the reason why I did so well in the service is because I was always trying to impress male leadership. I know that in retrospect. Yeah. You know, in the moment, I wanted to do a good job, but I wanted to do a good job for that person. Yeah. You know what I mean? It wasn't just to do a good job and achieve. A lot of it was, this Master Chief who's been in the service for 30 years, like, if he's looking at me and saying you're doing a good job, wow, that makes me feel great.
Validated. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it took me a minute to kind of like realize that. And I did well. I worked hard, whatever. Like, not to say that it was all because of that, but like I enjoyed it. I worked hard. I advanced to chief in like 9 years, which is super fast.
Yeah.
In the service, and so I earned it. But it came at its own cost in a lot of ways.
What was it like coming from, like, getting into the service, right? Obviously there's structure, there's identity with it, right? Coming from the chaos you had, what was that shift like to you at the time? It just felt purposeful, or I don't know.
It feels, that's a great question. It was like, I think initially, it's what everybody experiences. It's like a shock to the system, like people yelling at you, do this, jump high, run this fast.
Yeah.
Fill your pockets with sand and march out into the ocean. That's the Coast Guard's version, right?
Different version of being yelled at for things. Yeah.
Just like all this stuff, right? And so it's like, what the fuck is going on, right? So but over time, I got a lot of security from it. The routine, knowing what's going to happen, expectations. Like, I'd never had that to that point, right? And so, 12 years of school, right? Grade school through senior and high school, I went to 12 different schools growing up. Damn. Like, I went to the same school. I remember one year I moved to 3 different schools in like 2nd grade.
So you didn't even have like stable friendships?
No. And that's why I was like the class clown, like very extroverted. So I would go to school and my mission was to make friends, not do good in school, because I wanted to fit in as quickly as possible.
I feel you there. Yeah.
I didn't do terrible in school, but, probably at best I was a C student throughout, whatever.
Same.
Because my mission was always like, if I can make you laugh, it makes me feel more comfortable if people around me like me here, and I can control that.
Yeah.
Through comedy and whatever.
Yeah.
Because at home, there was no control. There was no, I was either being shuffled around or told to go play, like, and the whole aura of you were almost adopted out and shit like that. So growing up, we talk about the abuses, but I think the thing that was the most impactful for me that I had to work through as an adult was not feeling wanted, and always feeling like a burden constantly.
Fear of rejection.
Yeah. Maybe. So getting that acceptance as a school kid, going to school, cutting up, doing whatever, because then like when I joined the service and I had all this security and purpose and expectations and consistency and all these things, all of a sudden I learned that I was like this huge introvert. You know what I mean? Like,
isn't that wild?
Yeah. Like, this isn't who I am. Like, people would meet me later on in life and be like, oh, well, you're way different. I'm like, no, this is actually who I've always been. That was a kid going through shit.
What's crazy is like my home life was different, but like same thing. I moved 7 times, which is a lot for a kid. My wife, for example, grew up in Smithville her whole life, went to the same schools, like that was her experience. And like where I went to high school, that was everybody's. I lived in a tiny town.
Yeah.
But I think about it, and obviously I went through what I did at 8, but I was moving, and I was always trying to make people laugh, and I was very extroverted. And even then today, like I find myself, I'm extremely introverted. I love deep conversation,
right?
But outside of that, I like to focus on my craft, just not be bothered, So it's interesting you say that. It's never really hit me. So thank you for making me like kind of understand that.
After this conversation today, I'm gonna be like, people go away.
Yeah.
Right.
Want nothing to do with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, so thank you for that. Gave me some realization there. So I'd say coming with the service too, there felt like there was some belonging, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You're wanted.
Yeah.
And which I didn't have a lot. Right. So it was a big shift for me. Right. So like to go back to your question of like, where's that one person? It was really that one experience of joining the service, which really rescued me in a big way.
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, and so then while in the service is when I really started to look to finally start like learning what it meant to be a man. And then I had a son at 26 and it's like, oh shit, now I got to figure out how to be a father. Not having an experience of that, right. On the receiving end. So, that's something that I've always been hyper vigilant about. And I know there's a lot of men out there that are like, even men who grew up with great fathers are probably still out there like, am I doing it right? And so, it's being a dad, being a man in this day and age is a challenge.
Dude, to give you an example, I mean, like we talked about it before the cameras were rolling. I told you about that moment with my daughter. I was working on that door. She just wanted to sit with me. Then she's in bed, I didn't even finish it till the next morning. I just had to like fit it in the frame and make sure it stayed put.
Yeah.
Cause I was just tired.
Yep.
And dude, I'm not gonna lie. I think moving out of the country has allowed my mind to slow down a lot. Like we were saying, bro. And I cried so hard. And I don't know why it made me so emotional, but it's like, my wife was like, are you good? And I'm like, I just hope I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
And I think that's I say that out loud because I think a lot of men probably ask themselves that or are hard on themselves as like, am I doing a good enough job? And that's an all across the board thing. As a provider, as a present husband, as a present father, there's so many pieces of those three things. There's so many different layers to it that it can be troublesome. It can really throw you through a loop, right? And I needed to feel that, and I'm glad, and I'm like, it's raised the awareness more. But yeah, I mean, it goes along with what you're saying, man. Like in this day and age too, it's just there's a lot that comes along with it.
Yeah, yeah. And kids are constantly trying to make bids for connection, and I miss them all the time. My wife's got to point them out,
I told my wife to check me. Yeah. Hey.
And I'll be like, really? Like that was a bit like, she's like, yeah, no, I could see it. And I'm like, oh, all right, I'll work on that. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Instead of being like hard, beating yourself up. Cause I typically do that. I'm like, oh, I wish I could just rewind. You can't, it's just like, okay, be better tomorrow. Pay attention a little bit more, honey. In those kind of moments, just be like, Joe, just go sit with her for a minute, and it's good when you have a spouse that will check you on it and, hold you accountable in the right way. Cause it's important to be able to like receive that and be like, okay, thank you,
Yeah. I think, I think that's a key there too. You have to be able to receive it.
Not get defensive.
Yeah.
And, you think I suck at being a dad? No.
Trust me, I get defensive a lot, but, I think as I've gotten older, I'm like, I'm never going to have it all figured out. And it's nice to have a partner to be like, yo, look at that right there.
Yeah. That's what makes them key.
Yeah.
But that was kind of built off of what you were saying. Like, so at 26, it's time to become a dad. And so what was that experience like? Was that with your first marriage?
Yep. So he's now 19, halfway through college, but I was 26 in the Coast Guard. I was gone basically half the year doing Coast Guard stuff. But
what stuff did you do, by the way? Where's your career?
At that time, I told you about how the brochures had boats, jumping through waves and doing cool shit.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of the United States working on the river. So, which was cool in its own right, but it's not what I initially signed up for.
You might get some wake.
Yeah. So, I did a lot of aids and navigation on the river. And so, at that time I was the executive officer of a boat up in Iowa, and we had a huge area of responsibility, and we maintained all the aids to navigation for all the commercial traffic on the waterways of the Mississippi River. So,
that's pretty cool though.
No, it's badass job actually.
Yeah.
But it's a little known job, and it's not one that is going to be on the brochure to get people recruited into the Coast Guard, but it's probably the best job in the Coast Guard.
No shit.
If I'm being honest with you. But so I was up there doing that. So we were going every other week, 1 week out, 1 week in, 1 week out, 1 week in was basically the routine. So, so during her pregnancy, I think I took maybe 2 weeks off when he was born, in retrospect, I'm like, man, I should have took way more, but whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, it was a blur, man. First kid, 26.
Maybe you talked about how you were trying to impress and like you were trying to like achieve certain levels in your job.
Yeah, balancing achieving in my career and being at home was difficult for me because, you know, I wanted to be a good husband and dad, but I really wanted to do good here and, you know, get that validation.
That was your identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. But I'll tell you, you know, and I think a lot of men have this experience when they have a kid. Julian, my oldest son, he was born. It was a really difficult labor. My wife at the time had to have a emergency C-section. Like, doctor was like, literally 50 years ago, she'd be dead. Like, it was pretty wild. So, you know, they cut him out and he was 10 pounds, some odd ounces, I think 8 ounces. He was a big boy.
Big boy.
Yeah. Like, you know, and, we spent a few days at the hospital, but, driving home with him in the car seat behind me is the best time, is the best driving I've ever done in my life. Like 10 and 2, you know, the whole thing. And then I remember getting home and he's in a little, you know, detachable car seat thing. And I set him on the couch. He's wearing his little St. Louis Cardinals onesie. I'll never forget this. And I looked at him and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I said that out loud. I'm like, it was like, what do I do now? Yeah. This is like this little, he's completely reliant. Like,
Wild.
you know, like this is your job.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was a mixture of like scared and fascinated and just all of it.
It's like if you could see your soul, it's when
Everything
you hold your
shifts.
kid for the
Everything
first
shifts.
time, you know?
And I think, you know, as I even just honestly, as it's coming to me as we're talking about it now, it's probably the first moment that my perspective of how I was raised, how I grew up, I started to gain like exponential greater perspective of all that. You know, it probably made my relationship with my mom harder for a while because it was like, wow, like how could you have let that happen?
Yeah, that's when
know
like
what I
the
mean?
resentment kind of came out.
It's because it's like, I would never let that happen to this kid.
Yeah.
You know, how did you let that happen? And so I went through a period of that for sure. But then you get humbled as a parent and realize how difficult it is. And you're like, well, shit, she was only a kid too. And then you start to gain that empathy. Right. And so it's a dynamic, right? It's a roller coaster of like figuring it all out. But, so, you know, that we raised him together until he was about 4, and then we didn't have a great marriage and we divorced. And that was a huge shift for me. Devastating situation for me. In that, you know, I was more or less in acceptance and at peace that like our marriage wasn't working and wasn't going to.
Yeah. So we're talking about the divorce, right?
Yeah.
And kind of, from what it sounds like, that fear of becoming your father.
Yep.
Which you were so far from that, right? Here you are, you're stable, you're there, but a divorce happened, right?
I was my father when the divorce happened in my brain.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So
like, that's how it landed for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and dive into that then.
No, I mean, that's just if I'm putting myself in that moment, I was a complete failure.
Yeah.
I was failing at, you know, everything that I wanted to be. It was a devastating loss.
So that's like the compilation of what happened in you when the divorce happened.
I mean, growing up as a kid, you know, I had some curiosities about who my dad was and whatnot, but, you know, I learned a lot from experiencing men as a kid growing up. I remember, even as silly as it sounds, in my little kid brain, I remember watching black and white Leave It to Beaver and thinking, that dad's great. Like, I want a dad like that. You know, freaking Leave It to Beaver. And so when I had my son, it was like, I'm going to be the best freaking dad there is. I'm never leaving him, and there's no argument here. And so that was my mission. That was my goal. And anything less than that was failure. And so when my marriage began to really suffer, it pushed me in a position to where I was like, this is a choice I never wanted to have to make, and here I am. And I had to be the one to ultimately make that choice, which made it even worse for me because now I'm the one choosing this. Right. So
what do you think, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
what do you think forced that shift, the marriage, like
so for me, I'll just put it this way. There was activity outside the marriage, which damaged it pretty good. And then, I never could connect with her the same. And it was just fractured,
Yeah.
And so it got to a point where, there was no love between her and I, and obviously it's okay now. Like, it is what it is. It happened. But at the time, I felt like, what kind of example am I setting for my kid? Like, I don't want him to grow up and get into a relationship or a marriage where he thinks that this is okay.
Yeah.
And so it became a situation where he was 4 years old at the time. Do I want to give him another 12, 14 years of being at the effect of two parents who don't really talk?
It does more damage.
Right. And so growing up how I grew up, I kind of had this understanding that this would be more damaging than divorcing and being able just to pour into him without having to manage this marriage that was failing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you think maybe, just curious, because you see it a lot, I think people come so hyper focused on the children that they lose that connection with their marriage.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they stop dating, right? Essentially, right? And I've told my wife since day one, I'm like, you're always number one,
Right?
because you and I are the result of this. Like, if I can't put this over you, because if we lose that, then it falls apart.
Yeah.
So do you think maybe you were so hyper focused on how to be the father
Yeah. I mean, I was so hyper focused on being a dad, achieving whatever I was looking to achieve in my career. I told you earlier that I advanced pretty fast. I think the last, I in the service went to advance to E7. You have to take a written test and you got to have good performance ratings, all this stuff. But I was so young that I had to really do well on the written test, right?
Yeah.
And so, when I wasn't gone doing work for the service, I was at home and my head was in a book. So if I wasn't home, and when I was home, it was still like I wasn't home.
Yeah.
So I know I had a lot to do with that marriage failing, because I'm sure my wife at the time was like, I'm married to a person who's not invested here.
Yeah.
And so I know that didn't help. And when we had a kid, in a lot of ways, it made me do that even harder, because I wanted to provide for him and all that stuff, which, obviously in retrospect was like, wow, I really screwed the pooch on that one. But,
yeah.
but, a lot of it was out of fear of a lot of things. And one of my big lessons from that was like, the things that you fear the most, you create for yourself.
Yeah.
So from a lot of fear of not ending up as a dad who's a weekend warrior dad paying child support, that's exactly what I got. And so that's why it was so devastating. It's like, this is what I've been working not to have. And by working not to have this, I worked so hard that I worked my way out of it, of this marriage, and myself right into the thing I didn't want.
How did you overcome that? Obviously, because you're still got to do your work. You can't just take a break.
mean, it took a minute, I'm not going to lie. A lot of self-reflection. I immediately, when we divorced, I moved out, separated, and, I was fortunate enough to be able to live near him and have like 50-50 custody situation for about a year. So I was seeing him, during the week, every other weekend, whatever.
Yeah.
And immediately my choice to do this was validated in the sense that when I did have him, I felt like such a better dad.
Yeah.
Like I felt the stress of my marriage was no longer there. I just felt so much better as a dad. Like I could actually pour into him and experience him in a way that I'd never felt like I had before. And so it was really great in that aspect. And so
it all worked out.
it all worked out. It still was a pain point for a long time. You know, eventually I got stationed in California. And so then I was like a couple thousand miles away from him. And it was an arrangement of putting a 6, 7, 8-year-old on a plane to visit me when he wasn't in school. I had him for the summers and school breaks and things like that. And the hardest thing I ever did was the first time he flew to California and I put him back on the plane. Like I had strangers in the airport consoling me because I was like a bubbling, crying mess.
Oh, rightfully so.
So like it was difficult to just say the least. It was really, really freaking hard, you know, especially summers. He'd be out there with me for 2 months. And then like, I go back to the house after dropping off at the airport and his bike's parked out in the front yard. And it's almost like you're experiencing loss over and over and over again when he comes to visit. And because for me in the situation we were in, it wasn't like, oh, I'll just see him next week. It's like, I'm not going to see him again for a couple months, you know?
Yeah.
So that was hard.
That's devastating, man. And you're still trying to stay focused at your job and do all those things. Were you able to still perform pretty well there?
Yeah. I mean, I made job choices after that, you know, I aspired to take on command roles in the Coast Guard prior to this, but my focus shifted after the divorce. I was like, okay, I got to figure out a way to balance being in the service and being here for my kid.
Yeah.
So I had to table all of my aspirations that I had that I was pursuing in the service. And so it's really what kind of started me on my journey to be a coach and help people with leadership and, you know, just having better lives. And so, so when you advance to E7, you become a chief in the Coast Guard, same as the Navy. But in the Coast Guard, they send you to a senior enlisted leadership course. It's a 5-week course on site. They, you know, send you to California and you're just leadership, like on steroids, health and wellness, stress management, how to lead, decision-making, strategic thinking, learn a lot about yourself. Like they push you. It's 5 weeks. I went through it, loved it, thought I would love to do this.
Yeah.
Like provide this. So after the divorce, I said, well, now that's going to be my thing. So I want to go be an instructor at the Chief Petty Officer Academy. So
Sweet.
that's what I pursued. I had to apply for it. It was a selection process. I was able to get it. The beautiful thing about that was, I was far away, but I had a manageable schedule, right? I taught leadership in a schoolhouse. It was sort of like a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday kind of a thing. And so I had a predictable schedule so where I can balance having a kid, flying him out there, things like that. The alternative would have been if I had aspired to keep doing what I was doing before, I'd be out on a big boat in the ocean for 2-3 months at a time on a schedule that's dictated by the government, not me.
Yeah.
So that chose the other path to, you know, bring more balance to being the father in the situation I was in. And it worked out because then I went to go teach leadership, and that was life-changing because to teach leadership, you have to go through all the training, and there was a lot of self-work that was involved with, you know, all that stuff. And so I poured into myself. So it was sort of like a ride-on-time situation. Right after my divorce, I go learn to be a leadership instructor and coach and teach people how to develop themselves.
That's cool. Yeah.
Like, so all of a sudden I was immersed in this world of self-development, and that's where I really started to achieve growth. you
Yeah.
know, for
Yeah.
myself. And so,
You can't take on those kind of roles without being willing to do
yeah.
the work yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, I say it with this,
Mhm.
I have to constantly be willing to transform and go deeper because, like, in order to hold this kind of space, it requires that.
Yeah.
If I stand still, then the conversations and the relationships will degrade.
Yep.
So there's a lot to that, right?
Yep.
In any leadership position, unless you're just one of those leaders that just leads by the book and
yeah. And yeah, so like you, that's, a lot of how you get people to share in those spaces is by sharing yourself. And so once I figured that out, I became really good at it. You know, like I was having classes where people were coming up to me afterwards and be like, "Oh my God, that was great. Like, I didn't expect that. Like, cool. Like,
awesome.
Do more of that. Like, that's what it's about,
Vulnerability has a lot of power, man.
Oh, it's the most powerful thing.
Yeah.
Because it's a way to show people love in a way that's like, vulnerability creates a space where people feel the safest version of like, just, I can love you without like giving you something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, like, I'm showing you that it's okay to be you. And that's like a really powerful form of love for somebody else.
Oh,
you know
100%. I think it's one of the most important tools you could have. But and it's crazy because, we know this, but a lot of people don't expect it going into a conversation. And it throws them off, and then but you see their walls come down, and then they're pouring things out, and that just...
Or go up hard and they leave.
Yeah, they're like, no, wait, let's nail this down.
I've had that happen a few times.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's shifted for them. Yeah. But no, I think that's really cool. And like, again, it sounds like it all kind of just the path laid out as it should.
Listen, I look back on my life and think, holy shit, it's like my belief is that there's a divine something at work. Like, because I look at my life and I'm like, it just all makes sense, and so, going back to where I'm at in my career right now, I'm like, I'm just leaning into that. Like, I look back on my life and be like, it all makes sense how I got here. Now it's time to just lean into that and be like, you have proof that you're going to be taken care of. So lean into that for change instead of trying to like manipulate and control it,
Yeah. Because you can reflect on a lot of the negative situations, and that, if something goes wrong, you kind of, that fear kind of creeps in. It's like, well, what if it ends up like it did in my childhood, or something extreme that's like not going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, instead of embracing it for all what it is and finding the lesson and the gold in every single situation. That's the beautiful part.
Yeah.
When did you eventually get remarried? Were you still in?
So I remarried actually soon after my first divorce, and that was like a rebound marriage that we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on.
Oh, okay. So okay.
but I was married in California for about 5 years, and that was a marriage that was built on a lot of fun and excitement. That once the fun and excitement was gone, the marriage fizzled and it just kind of deteriorated.
It got real.
Yeah. So I like to kind of, not that you want to rebound into a marriage, but it was kind of a rebound type of marriage, coming out of my 10-year heartbreak marriage, losing my kid. Like, I met someone who was pretty and fun and exciting, and it's something I hadn't had in a long time, and I fucking rolled with it.
Why not?
But that ended up, in divorce, and to be honest with you, this is like the dark side of self-development. When you get to learn more about yourself, then you start seeing things for what they are and why you've made the choices you made. And I think I began to evolve like exponentially over the course of like a few years, and we sort of just evolved apart in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? I grew, and not to say that she wasn't growing, but I grew in a direction that really she wasn't game for.
My mentor told me this, like, you don't take on. He didn't say don't take on, but he said something along the lines of like, in a marriage, like taking on personal development yourself is one of the easiest ways to grow apart. So it needs to be a team effort.
Yeah.
You both need to be willing to like grow
100%.
together.
And there was some attempt at that, but it wasn't easy on her end of it. And there, I mean, there was other issues that we don't have to get into that I think is a waste of time at this point. It just didn't work out, right? And soon after, you know, I met my current wife, and it's just been a blessing ever since.
When'd you meet her? What year?
So we actually met while I was married to my second wife, but we were, you know, I told you my values and integrity. I'm telling the truth. We were friends.
Yeah.
we were friends. I was going through a coaching certification process, and you know, we met in some of those circles, and we had basically an online friendship for a few years.
Yeah.
And then my marriage was in the gutter, tanking. We started working on some projects together, and then, you know, it was kind of like the one thing led to another kind of a thing, and we formed a relationship, a bond. And when I decided to that my marriage was over and started recognizing that I had feelings for this other person, I was like, this is the nail in the coffin. I can't keep doing this, you know? And so my wife and I met in person once, and we were like, well, we're either going to have coffee or we're going to get married for the rest of our life. We don't know, you know? And ended up, we're going to be like, we just clicked.
Isn't that cool?
I mean, it's stupid. Like, I can't even explain it. Like, her and I, when we met, it was just like, oh, I've known you forever. And it was a situation where I've never had this before.
Yeah.
You know, never. And so it's been that way ever since. And we've been through some shit. We've been married for a little over like 6.5 years now. And it's been the fastest 6-7 years in my whole life because I've been happy. We've faced a lot of stuff, but we've done everything together. And I've never had that. So I actually feel like I have a partner.
I love that, dude.
You know?
It reminds me of I got to say something because my wife and I were in the same situation. Like I told you how we met, and we met for some drinks, and that was it, dude. Same thing. It just clicked, and you just, I don't know. It was just, it's almost hilarious to think about, or just crazy to think about how you just knew from that moment on. I mean, it's like, I always tell people, just be an open book up front. It's like, if I would have pulled out this book of my life and my ambitions and who I am and just like showed it to her, that's what it was like.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, and
you get it all up front.
In our situation too, you know, we talk about making hard choices, and there was a lot of reasons for us to not pursue each other.
Yeah.
You know, she had 3 kids already.
Yeah.
You know, I had a kid. She was in a crappy marriage she was separating, divorcing. So was I. Like, I lived in California. She lived here in Nashville, hence why I'm in Nashville now. But there was a million reasons why we shouldn't have done any of this. But there was one reason why we should. And that's the one reason that we had faith in. Like, we were both experiencing a type of love that we both knew was possible and had been pursuing our entire lives. And we're like, now that we have it, like, there's going to be fucking nothing that stops this. And so, you know, we committed to each other and we made it happen. I mean, in large part, I retired from the service because I was like, okay, like, I can't do both now. You know, I'm gonna go do this. You know, so, you know, it's a culmination of life experiences and lessons. But like, you know, I moved here. I retired. I moved to Nashville, and we've built a life together through the pandemic, through all kinds of stuff, all kinds of storms. You know, getting pregnant, losing a baby, then having another, and then getting pregnant again, and having an amazing son. And we got 5 amazing children together. Like, you know, I'm experiencing my happy ending right now.
Yeah.
You know, which brings its own challenges, because it's like, oh shit, like, and I got to take care of myself and not die, because I want to enjoy this for a while.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing though, man. And like, I want to know first, when did you retire?
2019.
So you're getting out like right when y'all met, like right after y'all met, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because because I want to dive into that family dynamic and, dive
Yeah.
into that a little bit more. But what was the transition like out of the military? Was there like this really hard identity shift?
Yeah.
That
100%.
Yeah, because you were a career guy, man.
Yeah. Everybody says it's hard. It doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
It's really fucking hard.
Yep.
And I didn't realize the kind of hard it was until you're in it. And it's not that you miss the job. I mean, some people miss the job, but for me, it wasn't the job so much. It was the community and the safety and the consistency and the predictability, right? All that shit that I said I loved and that was great for me when I joined. Now I'm like choosing to leave that behind.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and not only that, I'm moving to Nashville, new wife, 3 new stepchildren. So like, let's just throw it all in the pot, right? And try to manage all that at the same time. But yeah, it was, you don't take that community with you.
No.
And it's, I miss it right now. There's friends that I had that I haven't spoken to in years, and it's not like a bad thing. It's just, we go our separate ways, man, and the service isn't there to provide that connection point anymore. And so you have to either create that for yourself, by putting that effort in, or figuring out how to manage that and move on, like, or a combination of both, and so, it's why we see veterans struggle. It's why we see veteran suicide be through the roof after they get out, whether they did 4 years or 34 years,
Yeah.
Because I've been in some dark places afterwards, because it's your purpose. It's
Yeah.
my purpose for over 2 decades.
What would you say your identity is today? I asked this only because my guest I told you about that was a Green Beret.
Mm-hmm.
He told me this story, just one story, and he talked about his liberation at SEER school.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like 100 different ways that could happen, right? But it was a big piece like that his liberation was this big piece of his faith and who the man he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
To 8 children, it's like it's a lot of responsibility. He said, but my identity isn't that anymore. It's like my faith and my family and
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and Z, right? I forget exactly what he said. He said, I have a new identity, but a lot of people, if their identity remains that years after service. So I wanted to ask you, is that still your identity, or what would you say your identity is today?
So it's definitely not my identity.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much. My identity today is really about my family.
Yeah.
My identity is my 4, 7, 10, 15, and 19-year-old.
Yeah.
My identity is how my wife looks at me at the end of the day. Like that's my identity.
Yeah.
Now, am I proud of my time in the service? Yeah, of course I am.
Yeah.
Do I have moments where I'm like, still wiping my 4-year-old's butt and thinking to myself, wow, 8 years ago I was a chief petty officer, and people were like,
yeah,
good morning, chief, and I knew all the answers.
Now you're wiping butts.
Now I'm wiping butts and making macaroni and cheese, and that's like my challenge.
Ain't nothing better though.
But it's like, so it's I have moments of like, wow, like how did I get here? But not in a bad way. Like it's just so different. And or my 7-year-old, asking me a question and me giving her an answer, and then she just argues with me and tells me how wrong I am, and it's like, this is so, I like.
Oh yeah,
arguing with 7 and 10-year-olds is it's like, wow, it's wild to just like, I was once in the service, and like I had all this esteem and authority and position power and all these things, and like all that's gone, right?
Yeah.
And now you're papa, and these kids love to challenge you, and so like your ego is like, what the hell is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I have my ego moments where I'm like, are you kidding me right now? But that's my identity now, is being a dad, like truly, and even more so being a dad to 4 stepdaughters who, I take even more seriously than I think even if they were my biological daughters.
I think there's a lot of entitlement too.
What do you mean?
I think there's a lot of like, well, I've overheard people being like, well, civilians, they just don't understand this and that. And I'm like, there's just like this, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, you signed, like, there's a lot to be proud of. You signed that paper, you knowing that you could go to war and all this stuff. But I think like, I met a lot of people, man. When you sit with people and just hear their story, I met a lot of people that have faced battles that like, are equal to some war. Like in their childhood and their life, so that maybe they didn't get the opportunity or whatever the case, or they didn't think they were good enough to be a part of the service, right? But like they still face some shit. So I don't think of anybody lesser. I've just overheard people like speak as if they're like almost better than because they did. Does that make sense?
Because they did the service?
Yeah. like civilians just complain. And,
Oh,
and I'm like, well, no, you don't know their story.
Yeah.
That's something we can dive into another time.
No, I mean, I think that's a good thing to talk about because honestly, part of the, I don't know if we're recording if you want to get into this, but
yeah, no, let's go for it.
Part of the work I'm feeling called to do is to work more in the veteran community.
Yeah.
Right. And use my leadership development, coaching, and my skills and all the stuff I've gained over the last 15 years and like really channel that to veterans in transition from leaving the service and pursuing whatever they're going to pursue afterwards. Right. Giving them some community, helping them with some processes and ways to like kind of work things out and, figure out their next steps, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. I can do that. That's my specialty. Right. And so, you say like, some, the gatekeeping, I might retract a little bit and say, when I said it's not my identity anymore, I mean, it is a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's some aspects of it. Like, for example, like, I can understand when a veteran says civilians don't understand. Because I do think that's true to an extent.
Agreed.
But to hold that over their head is where it gets irresponsible.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think there's a lot of civilians that may not understand, but they understand. Like they get it. Like they can get that that's got to be hard. Right. Or, they may not understand what it's like to look at another man sitting in a ditch somewhere and think this guy's got my life and I've got theirs. Like, sure, a civilian may not get that.
Yeah.
They may not know what it's like for me to be on a search and rescue mission and pull alongside a dead body, flip them over and be like, holy shit, that's someone's kid.
Yeah.
Like I've had that experience. Like it's hard to like understand that without being in it. But that's not something that I should hold over somebody's head. It's part of my experience. And that is a part of my identity to a degree. And that's stuff that we'll all carry with us as we get out of the service.
Yeah.
I think where the struggle is for veterans, and I'll speak for myself, is you have these experiences where you do big things. You're a part of traumatic things. I've had the experience of pulling kids out of water that are dead. I've had the experience of pulling kids out of the water that are alive and thanking me and their dads thanking me. I've watched, mothers cry over their kids drowning in the lake. Like I've seen a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And been a part of it and had to make statements and console strangers. Like it's not fucking easy.
Yeah.
And that's a part of me today. And so I think why that is hard for people to carry into civilian life is because everything looks so small in comparison.
Yeah.
In the outside world, quote unquote, the outside world.
So they minimize their experience.
Right.
But that's theirs.
Right.
Does that make sense? Is that what you, or is that
yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, I'm kind of searching for the words to articulate here, but like it can make you feel disassociated in civilian life. And I think that's what really affects the veterans is like they feel disassociated, like they feel like none of this is real anymore.
Yeah.
And so, they find ways to soothe that or dumb it down or suppress it, whether it be through a bottle, drugs, gambling, name a million different things that distract you from the reality of what's going on, right? And I've struggled with that, you know, going from searching for someone's child somewhere in a water for 12 hours straight to changing kids' diapers. You're like, whoa, like I don't feel important anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
But then you realize how important that just wiping that butt is.
Right.
You know?
But it takes time to like, for those two ends of the spectrum to like connect.
Yeah.
You know?
I think,
I don't know if I'm making sense, but
no, I totally get it.
It's hard.
Everybody's, I always have to tell everybody's experience is their own, right? So I can't have any expectation in anybody to understand anything I've been through, right?
Right.
Until we have a conversation and maybe relate or not. But there's going to be different levels. But just because someone's had like a cush life and they're going through something to you that may not be that serious, that's the biggest thing that's happened in their life. It's all
relative.
So like, why am I going to knock you or be like, well, you didn't go through this, you know? And I think that's kind of where people get like stuck in comparison. But it's like, okay, if I go to my daughter and she's really upset that I made her come inside, or I took this thing because she threw it at me 5 times. But what I'm getting at is like, you know, I do something like that, you know, that's the end of the world to her. I'm not going to be like, you ain't been hit by a car and thrown through the air. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, that is the end of her world. This is her experience.
Another thing too, like that's a good comparison, or is our 10-year-old is diagnosed autism. And so she experiences things differently, right? So like one of the things that really stands out is how she feels things in her body, right? So if she stubs her toe, skins her knee, whatever, like, you know, you and I might look at that and be like, brush it off. But for her, that bodily sensation is like, she just had her leg severed. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so her reaction to that is relative to her, you know, how she absorbs that information in her body and her brain and all that stuff, right? And so it's no different than what you're saying. Like when you're 3-year-old, you know, you take a candy from a kid and it's like devastating. You're like, you can't get mad at them for it. Like they're having this real experience. And so, you know, sometimes my wife and I have to like coach our kids and be like, it may look like she's okay, but for her, she's not. And we have to still show up for her because it's a real experience for her. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And sometimes some people going through maybe things that don't equate to your experience in your life are that serious to them that like, hey, they don't want to hear the comparison. They just want you to be there for them. You know, that could be, and it could be life or death. So it's worth I always take everybody else's story and experience as just a perspective opportunity, right? Like just looking through things in a different lens. Yeah. But anyways, you got to get out of here, man. Yeah. You got some fatherhood. You got some dad stuff to handle. Yeah. I don't want to hold you from that. But guys, we do have a lot to cover, Nick and I. I've got a few more things we need to touch on. So I think this was an awesome episode. Dude, I'm so glad you committed to coming in today.
Great conversation.
And sharing your story. Like, I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity. I look forward to, you know, I'll reach out to you probably this afternoon about getting you back in the books. Right on. And we'll nail some other stuff. But I do got one final question.
What's up?
What is your relentless pursuit?
Oh, family legacy.
Family legacy.
Yeah. Like, you know, my wife lost an uncle recently, and we went to his, you know, services, and I sat there and watched his 2 boys talk about their father, and I thought to myself, that's what I want.
Beautiful.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I want my kids to be loving me when I'm no longer here, and be like, he really loved us and did right by us, and you know, that's my legacy.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate you, bro.
Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. Yep. All right, guys, until next time. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned in this show, and honestly in life, is that healing doesn't live in just one lane. Some people find it through addiction recovery, some through therapy, some through faith, some through hard conversations that they've avoided for years, and some for finally being honest about what they're carrying. I started this show to give people a voice, to share real journeys, real struggles, and real growth. And what it's shown me is how many people are walking through similar battles, even if it looks different on the surface. Through this platform, I've been connected with people across so many lanes: addiction recovery, mental health, veterans and first responders, faith, marriage and relationships, trauma, and everything in between. I want to say this clearly. If you're listening right now and you're struggling, please reach out. You don't need to know exactly what you need. You don't need the right words. You don't have to even know exactly where to start. But through my network, I'll do everything I can to get you connected with the right person in the right lane for where you are. That's what this show is about. Real stories, real connection, and reminding people that there is a way forward.